They are back. It's time for Red America Radio. Straight up conservative talk for today's red-blooded America. With the host of Behind the Headlines, TV's Karyn Turk, and Dr. Chris Metzler, political commentator and best-selling author. Making radio great again. Red America Radio.
Thank you, President Trump, for shining a spotlight on Baltimore. You said Baltimore was rat-infested. You said Baltimore was dirty. You said our schools were broken and our crime, well, was off the chart. And well, Baltimore, we've got a lot of work to do. Blight, crime, schools, trash. Corruption leading to investigation after investigation of failed leaders.
Yeah, I said it. And what?
Better schools, smaller classrooms, safer streets, and to coin a phrase, jobs, jobs, jobs. And Baltimore, together, we can do it. We can be faster, better, and stronger than we ever were before. Together, we can turn a new direction and make sure the best days for Baltimore are yet ahead. My name is Shannon Wright, and I absolutely approve this message.
Hello, welcome once again to Red America Radio, conservative talk for the red-blooded American. Chris Metzler here with the forever lovely Karyn Turk.
Thank you. And I think we're getting more and more red-blooded Americans every single day. The silent majority is growing every time we do an episode and every time the fake media lies about something.
Well, and the thing about our show is that, we're not beholden to anyone. No one owns us. We say whatever the hell we want, like it or not, who cares?
Who cares? Exactly. And, I want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this, whether you're listening on broadcast, you're watching us on YouTube, or you're catching us on Spotify, Red America Radio is now available almost everywhere that you are. We are literally taking over the internet and flooding you with content because some people want to watch us and some people want to listen to us. You can take us on the go with Spotify or Google Play or a number of other podcast apps. And we're here every Monday evening live, and then as the red pill the morning after that you can take, we're up with our podcast on Tuesday mornings.
Yeah, so what is going on in DC? It seems like after the RNC convention that what's happening now is that the Democrats have gone completely bonkers. Biden has emerged from the basement.
He has. And, and I don't know if you saw yesterday, but what I thought was kind of funny is there's this video that's circulating the internet, and I posted it a couple places today, and apparently it's been doctored. It wasn't actually Sleepy Joe. However, we all have to remember that although this one video is doctored, there are dozens of other videos with Joe Biden sleeping. And I'm going to play one right now for everyone.
Good.
Camera on you somewhere somehow for Joe Biden. Oh yes,
He's got a tough job.
He does. You know what? I'm sure he's a busy guy. I'm sure he gets no sleep. But the point is, a major policy speech by the big man, the boss, the president.
But I'm sure he's run it by him already, so he's
he knows it already. And so what he's doing, he's deep in thought, really contemplating the budget numbers. This is Vice President Biden during a speech yesterday. Of course, the president.
See, there's been so many incidents.
He has a record of sleeping. And that's the interesting thing. And it's funny because now I'm hearing the media say Joe Biden delivered a forceful message against Trump. The only thing that's forceful is that he had to be forced out of the basement. And that's about it. When you looked at this, content, I condemn violence, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what are you talking about, Joe? Really? Now he's going to Kenosha. For what? I thought you said that the president shouldn't go. But now that the president has gone, what are you doing? Playing catch up?
You know, his whole thing, the speech, you know, we played this a couple weeks ago with our whole Wizard of Oz reference, you know, out of the darkness and into the light. It was actually out of the darkness of the basement and into the Hollywood lights of that DNC speech, because that's all it was, is when an edited speech. You can see the edit points in the recording. I pulled it apart a couple times. It's obvious it was pre-recorded and edited. That's why he sounded so good. I mean, look at the interview that came up yesterday. He was talking about the coronavirus, and you know that the coronavirus has been around for 100 years. I mean, what are you even saying, Joe? I'm gonna play. You know what? I'm gonna play that one too. Let's play that one right now.
Let's do it.
COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. It's when you think about it.
It's the one and only Digo Double.
Yeah, he just keeps going and going and going. You know, there's just, it's a never-ending source of comedy, except it's kind of not funny because the man's actually running for president of the United States, even if he doesn't remember.
Yeah, I don't think he remembers. And the interesting thing for me is I'm still trying to figure out, so why exactly should he and Kamala be elected? It's not clear to me what the reason for that is. Look, they essentially are running on the same old Democratic playbook. Trump is bad.
That's it. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. That is the whole platform. That is the actual platform because they're not Donald Trump. Because they're not Donald Trump and they have a black woman. And what an absolute sin this is, that we actually live in America now where it's like, well, you know what? We're going to add the token black woman so we can win the ticket. You know, she should feel degraded, Miss Pro Woman. She should feel degraded by that.
Well, she should. But apparently, you know, being the opportunist that she is, she essentially says, okay, so he wins, you know, I'll be president, and there's that. But it is the most amazing thing to me. Not only should she be degraded by that, frankly, she has nothing to say. I thought she was supposed to be this bulldog. Really?
She's afraid. I think she's afraid to speak. I think she's a little afraid to put herself out there at this point because he's such a mess that it's, you know, she's associated with him, but the more she talks, the more it's going to get her into trouble at this point because he can't put a coherent sentence together. I mean, not that that's anything new, but you know, the whole Kenosha thing is driving me crazy. I'm actually doing an episode of Behind the Headlines on Jacob Blake and on the real story, what really happened. And over the last 2 days while I've been working on this, there have been some reports that have come out. The Kenosha Police Department did put out a statement which clarifies a lot of what happened, but I broke that story down into bite-sized pieces so you can digest it and understand it. And when you talk about fake media, this is the most perfect example of fake news I think I've seen this past year.
Well, and what I don't fundamentally understand is this. As we're talking about this whole thing, it's all, you know, around this whole race issue, Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand what any of that is about. Look, you know, this guy, you're really putting this guy up as a model, and then his father's going around, we don't want to hear anything from the orange man. Like, what? What are you talking about? And what I don't get, and I really don't understand this, for Democrats, from the standpoint of, they clearly don't seem to understand that there is a difference between peaceful protests and rioting, okay? We're all for peaceful protests. We are, however, against rioting and looting. Why don't they get that? It's not that hard.
You know why I think they don't get it, and I think it's probably resonate with a lot of our audience, is because they want to divide us. They want to cause division. They want to cause chaos. Their brand is chaos. The Democratic Party now exemplifies chaos. That's what they're about. That's their actual platform. Orange man bad, let's cause chaos. And that's all they have. It's it's literally a fabricated reality. It's not real. It's a Hollywood production.
Well, and we can see kind of what the future of the Democratic Party is going to be. So in Massachusetts, Kennedy was defeated by Markey, who's been in that office forever. And you know how we defeated him? By going to these crazy leftist policies. And I always say, if JFK were alive today, he would not be a Democrat. And that's the problem that we have. So what you're looking at is essentially the making of a very radical party led by AOC et al.
And the hypocritical party, I think, is more of it. And, that brings me to another little bit of breaking news, which is Naughty Nancy, who we talk about so much on this show. And Naughty Nancy just couldn't wait to get her hair done. She just couldn't actually comply with the restrictions in her own district. And let's watch the clip. Let's roll that clip.
Okay.
Nancy Pelosi is under fire today after surveillance video shows her at a hair salon getting a blowout and not wearing a face mask.
The optics don't look good. There needs to be a whole lot of explanation.
It's terrible. Nancy Pelosi is a hypocrite.
The most powerful woman in America can be seen with wet hair inside a salon in San Francisco. Problem is, under California COVID-19 regulations, clients cannot be serviced indoors. All blowouts, dye jobs, and styling must be conducted outdoors, like this.
How do you even deny this? And she's now come forward and admitted that she did this. And not only did she admit that she went into the salon and didn't wear a mask, she actually blamed the salon owner. That the salon owner told her that these were the regulations and that it was okay. So she's actually now not blaming herself for the regulations that she put in place and for violating those. She's blaming the salon owner for giving her misinformation.
Well, and I can't say that surprises me at all. It goes back to the $25,000 refrigerator from which she was eating various ice creams on TV. It goes back to her liberal entitlement. It goes back to her hypocrisy. It goes back to, I am royalty, you are peasants. All she needs to do right now is just say, let them eat cake.
Completely. And, I wonder if, and all I could think is, I wonder if that salon was also serving her wine while she was there.
Oh, so hey, because in those kinds of places, I wouldn't be surprised.
Or do you think she carries a flask? I mean, I don't know. Do you actually know anybody that carries a flask? Because although, in theory, I would think it would be a good idea. And I've seen people do it at weddings, bachelor party kind of thing. You get the gift, you get the flask. Do you actually know anybody that carries a flask?
Yeah, my 90-year-old grandmother, she does.
Chris, can we have her on the show, please?
We need to have her on the show.
Why is she not on the show?
She definitely carries a flask. And not only does she carry a flask, if you say to her, are you drinking out of a flask? She says, yeah. Why is that your business?
Ooh.
So
and what is she? What is Grandma drinking the flask?
Various liqueurs. Well, not liqueurs, liquor.
When I'm 90 and I'm a grandma, well, I'm a grandma now, but when I'm a 90-year-old grandma, and I'll probably be like a great grandma at that point, I am absolutely 100%. I'm going to say this on the show now. I am going to carry a flask with me all day long, and I'm going to be totally open about it too.
Well, and it's going to be a very fashionable flask.
Well, and I think the problem that I have with Naughty Nancy, I think my biggest issue is that it's so obvious that she's a heavy drinker. I mean,
obvious.
It's so obvious, but yet again, why? I mean, is she ever going to own that? Now she's going into the salon. Is she going to own it and be like, yeah, I was drunk in that last video. I was drunk. I was shit.
She's not gonna own that. She's absolutely not gonna own being drunk. That she's definitely not gonna own. Problem with Naughty Nancy is she will only own something when she's caught red-handed, as in this case. Other than that, my biggest problem with her is her condescending attitude to the voters. We are mere presents to her royalty. And that's my biggest problem.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she's borderline monarch. I think you're completely right about that. I think she considers herself royalty. I hadn't really thought about it that way before, Chris, but it actually makes total sense.
Precisely. And that's the issue. That's why she enacts some of the policies that she does. And frankly, those policies don't apply to her. They apply to us peasants.
Well, I'm gonna roll to commercial, but on the way into commercial, I'm just gonna play one of these lovely videos of Nancy just as we go into our commercial break, just because I can.
I love it.
Me about the appropriateness of the actions of this president of the United States, so completely inappropriate in so many ways that it's almost a given. It's like a child who comes in with mud on their pants or something. That's the way it is. They're outside playing. That's what he comes in with doggy do on his shoes, and everybody who works with him has that on their shoes too for a very long time to come. So
Divided We Stand. The Search for America's Soul is the most important book of our time. Best-selling author Dr. Christopher Metzler answers, "What the heck is going on, America?" Divided We Stand is a funny, fast-paced, razor-sharp, savvy critique of the state of our union and the disastrous reign of Barack Obama. Political lion slayer, red-blooded conservative Dr. Metzler offers inspiration and a positive message to America. The way to fight back and win is principle, conviction, and a wicked sense of humor.
In the days of clickbait news and salacious eyeball-popping headlines, you must delve behind the headlines. Things can get so murky on the internet that it's hard to see. Behind the Headlines TV on YouTube delves deep to fully expose the real truth. Each episode, Karyn Turk wades through the swampy news in thigh-high boots, breaking facts down into bite-sized pieces. Subscribe to Behind the Headlines TV to see her dominate YouTube with real facts behind today's biggest stories.
And we're back.
And we're back, and it's good to be back. It's good to be back. That was a good commercial break, and I did enjoy that moment of comedy from Naughty Nancy.
It was delicious.
It was. And you know what else is going to be delicious? It's going to be delicious when Baltimore City has a new mayor.
Oh, absolutely. I cannot wait for that. Pastor Shannon Wright is going to make Baltimore right again.
She is. And I know, I can't wait to talk to her. You know, you told me so much about her, and I've watched some of her other interviews, and she's a spitfire. She is so smart and so dynamic and so really locally in touch with the constituents in Baltimore City and working for them as a neighbor and a friend, but also has such a handle on the national impact of a city like Baltimore and how it affects all of us.
Well, she does, and that's absolutely the reason that she should be elected. Look, the fact of the matter is what the mayor of all of the former mayors of Baltimore don't get. The job of the mayor is trash, education, public safety, potholes. That's it. Okay? Those are important things, and you have to be, as a matter of fact, since the city has stopped collecting recycling, what Pastor has done is she has actually reached out to and is currently working with a number of privately owned trash pickup companies who will actually pick up the trash for residents of the city.
Well, you know, when I grew up in New Jersey, we had private trash companies, but it was quite different back in the 70s. And if you didn't actually tip your trash company, you know, you'd end up with, you know, someone with a very Italian last name throwing, you know, the trash on your lawn. So, you know, I think we're safe from that in the city of Baltimore. So I like the private trash idea, but I just had to throw in that little tidbit of a memory that I have.
I think so. I think we're safe from that. And speaking of Baltimore, you remember Nancy got her political start in the city of Baltimore when at the age of 12, she was the enforcer for her grandfather. So she would go around picking up all of the money that was due for all of the politicians to her grandfather, who was mayor of Baltimore at that time.
Oh, see, I heard the story a little bit differently. That's a really good story.
Yes.
That's a really good story. I actually that's probably the first thing I've ever heard about Nancy that I find likable and relatable.
Yes.
The only thing.
The only thing. That's the only thing. Other than that, she's of no use.
Absolutely. But who is going to be useful is Shannon Wright's going to be really useful to the residents of Baltimore. Let's get her on the phone. I can't wait to talk to her.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. She's fantastic.
Good to be here. And we have such an exciting guest today, Chris. I am so over the moon about this guest. You have no idea, because this is somebody who's really going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Pastor Shannon Wright. Pastor Wright is running for the mayor of Baltimore City. And of course, this is Red America Radio, so she ain't a Democrat. So Pastor Wright is actually the first woman and the first Black woman to be named to win the Republican nomination for mayor in the city of Baltimore. And I got to tell you, ever since Pastor Wright won the nomination, she has set Baltimore City on fire. She has been doing more press interviews than any other Republican candidate for mayor, I don't know, in the 50 years since a Republican has held the seat. So Pastor Wright, welcome to the show.
Welcome. And good morning. And I was going to say something about setting fires. And setting fires is in a good way, Chris, not like the Democrats set fires.
No. Not about destruction.
No, and I'm glad you just made that point. It's absolutely not about destruction. There's been enough destruction in Baltimore and our urban centers, and it's time for some unity. It's time for some gathering thought leaders together with solutions. Anyone can complain, anyone can armchair quarterback, but it's about bringing solutions and resources to the table to actually make a viable change. And that's what this campaign is focused on.
That's amazing. And what made you want to run? I mean, obviously seeing the destruction and the things that have happened there are probably part of the motivation. What's really behind your campaign?
A desire to see change. Politics was not something, if you had told me 10 years ago I'd be doing this, I would have laughed hysterically. It was so not on my radar. But I got tired of seeing failing schools and those numbers going in the wrong direction. I got tired of seeing crime stats increasing to rise. I got tired of seeing companies move out of the city and jobs with it. You get to a point where you see what direction that your city is going in, and you say enough is enough. And you can either continue to be a armchair quarterback on your cushy couch, kind of like I'm doing right now, or you can get off the couch and be a part of the solution.
Well, and you're on the couch, but you're still doing interviews all day long, including this interview with us, which is making change in itself, because you're really raising the awareness of what's happening in Baltimore and why it's so important for someone like you to jump into this race.
Absolutely. We need folks to understand that we've kind of gotten away from what politics is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a person that steps up to represent the people, instead of people that step up to vote in their own personal best interest. And when you get that twisted, you see the twisted effects in cities like Baltimore and Chicago and parts of Atlanta and, all around the country. So it's time to turn that around, flip that back over and get it going the right way.
So Pastor, you have two opponents you're running against, one of whom, Bob Wallace, who, because he could not win the Republican primary, decided that he would become an independent, which says to me that he was a rhino to begin with. So you have him, and then you have the most corrupt politician ever, Brandon Scott, who, by the way, in a Democrat controlled city, only got 30% of the vote in the primary election. This is the same Brandon Scott who, when it comes to the trash pickup and the rodents and everything, his response oh, Department of Public Works, I'm going to write you a letter. Can you do more? And by the way, I'm going to host a hearing. What?
So let's address Bob Wallace first. I don't know that I would agree that Bob Wallace, claiming to be a lifelong Republican and then running as an independent, says that he's a rhino, as much as it says that he lacks the backbone and intestinal fortitude to actually be able to stand up for the folks in the city. I think he may actually be a Republican, but perhaps something in the water has made him unable to stand tall for what he says he believes in. And in my opinion, that means he is absolutely unsuited to lead the city. This city needs the next mayor, which will be me, to be able to stand tall and strong and fight for the residents of the city. If you can't even stand and claim that which you say you are, meaning a lifelong Republican, how is someone supposed to believe that you have the ability to stand up for them and fight for them when clearly it is going to be a fight? So in my mind, that in itself shows why Mr. Wallace is unqualified to be the next mayor of Baltimore City. Now, in terms of Brandon, he's a cute young little boy. And in time, he may grow up to be someone that can actually handle running the city of Baltimore. But some of the things that are his claim to fame are exactly why he should not be the next mayor of Baltimore City. When you talk about, first of all, your age, and we were all young and at that age at one point in time, and that's cute. And at that point in time, we thought we knew everything there was to know. And then we actually grew up and realized we didn't. Baltimore doesn't have time for him to grow up while he's mayor. That combined with the fact that his claim to fame of having never left or abandoned his city means by his own admission, his only on-the-job training has been in the administration of Catherine Pugh, who's now in prison, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, who couldn't run for a second term because she botched the whole Freddie Gray incident, Sheila Dixon, who was removed for office, and so forth and so on. Those are the folks that trained him. That's not the type of leadership the city is. That leadership is why the city is the way it is now. So to vote for Brandon is to continue to see failed schools and to continue to see rising crime statistics and to continue to see a shrinking population in the city. So for those of your listeners that want to understand the dynamics and how local plays into state and federal, here's what I would say to you. No matter what state you live in, I'm going to ask that you join us in an experiment and support my campaign for mayor of Baltimore City, and I'm going to tell you why. In Maryland specifically, whether you live in Baltimore City or not, if you live in Maryland, your taxes pay to support the failed leadership and policies of Baltimore City. So whether you write a check to this campaign or not, you are paying for Baltimore City. And the same is true with all of our cities that have been run into the ground around the country. If you live in that state, your taxes pay for those failures and those mistakes. So I would ask all of your listeners to join me in an experiment. Support Right for Baltimore. Let's turn this city around and be the spark to turn all of our cities around throughout the country.
I think you just made a really amazing point, because I think so often we lose sight of the fact that these local elections do impact us all, not only on a state level, but also on a federal level. You know, Absolutely. It's our country. We're all one. We're all, like you said, unified. You know, you're talking about unity. And I love that your name's Wright and that you're on the right side of things, because a lot of the people on the left side have sat back and watched, even if they're not the purveyors of the destruction, they've sat back and watched and allowed the destruction to happen if Absolutely. They're that passive. And I admire the fact that you were so diplomatic when Chris kind of laid in with his edgy way, which I would be adept to do as well. And, you know, say this guy's a rhino and this other one, you know, is completely corrupt. And you came at this very diplomatically and said, and this is probably why you're a pastor and Chris and I are not, because you have such kindness in your heart to actually see the good in these people that have led to the destruction. And I think Baltimore's an excellent example of many cities in our country that need new leadership and need new direction. And it's so nice to see someone like you be a part of that.
So thank you for that. You know, coming on and being with folks like you gives me the energy to be able to continue, because it is not an easy fight to be an actual conservative Republican in Baltimore City. But I will say this, in terms of ministry and kindness in my heart and being able to say things differently, I tell folks that want to kind of push the envelope and test the waters on that. When you look at Christianity and you look at me and my faith, there's Old Testament and there's New Testament. Now, which one of those you get depends on how far you push that envelope.
I like it. And as a Jewish girl, I can appreciate that. I like that you have chutzpah.
And so, Pastor Wright, as you have been working through the campaign, you had a very interesting interview in which members of the interview panel said to you that it's probably not a good idea for you to run for mayor. And I'm paraphrasing here, but because if you did, you might not be able to negotiate deals as a pastor. Now, my editorial comment, they are essentially saying to you that they want to continue their corruption in the city. But again, that's my editorial comment.
So it was pretty accurate there. It was put to me that being someone of faith might be in direct contradiction to being in politics and might inhibit my ability to be able to close deals and do negotiations that need to be done to move the city forward. And I said, well, let me explain something to you. For those of you that understand faith, in the Bible, in the book that I studied from, which is the Bible, there's a thing called discernment, which means I can see through the smoking bowl. Now, what that means is the only things that I cannot do or will not do is anything in this life to affect where the next one goes. That's number one. So that means in terms of being corrupt, criminal, unethical, or immoral, you're right, I'm not going to do that. But if that's the kind of leadership you're looking for, that's why the city is where it is. So if we want to move the city in a new direction that is above board so that the city can grow based on the structure and the integrity of the leadership of the city, then I'm the candidate for you. I said, but now if you want to continue to do what you've been doing in the dark and under the covers, that's your business. And then no, I am not the candidate for you, but I will be very clear. As mayor, I will be ripping off the covers, the Band-Aids and everything else and finding all the little boogeymen that are hiding in the dark and in the corners, and they will be gone, period.
That's great. I love this so much because I've seen firsthand corruption in our court systems, in our state systems, in our congressional representatives down here in Florida, where it's become such a system. And I know it's the same in Baltimore. And again, why Baltimore is such a great example for everyone watching this, everywhere you are in the country, because it is one example of many where the state, the federal, your local county courts, your local officials, people that are supposed to be representing you as a constituent, they may not necessarily have your best interests at heart. And it goes even a step beyond that to where, you know, it's ingrained in criminal corruption in many cases. And somebody's got to call this out. We need leadership to come in and, like you said, expose the boogeyman. I can't wait for you to do that.
I am fighting this fight, and I will be fighting this fight up until November 3rd. The citizens of Baltimore deserve someone that will actually stand up and have their back. And they have not had that, and I'm not even sure they know what that looks like. But we're going to teach them. They're going to find out.
And as it relates to Brandon Scott and the question of crime, you know, Brandon Scott's response really is very simple. He says, as it relates to dealing with issues of crime in Baltimore, defund the police.
Now, that honestly is one of the biggest smokescreens and loads of farm necessary material to fertilize the fields that I've heard in a long time. And I'm gonna tell you why. Baltimore currently is under a court-ordered consent decree, which means two of the things that are mandated by the courts right now are, one, to increase funding of the police department, and two, to update the police department. So when you hear someone like Brandon Scott saying defund the police out of the left side of his face, it's because he knows on the right side, he can't do it anyway. But the voters don't know that. The voters are hearing the words come out of his mouth that they want to hear. But he knows when he's saying these words. So it's one of two things. Either he already knows when he's saying that he's lying, or he doesn't know, in which case he's an inept individual that does not need to be leading the city. Either way, he is not the responsible choice for the next mayor of Baltimore City.
Well, and you could go back historically, and I've looked a lot at the, of the killing of Freddie Gray, along with, a lot of the other things that have happened recently with this whole defund the police narrative. And this truly started, this whole defund the police thing started with the death of Freddie Gray. That's kind of where this narrative was leading, and it's so politically tied. But I think a lot of constituents don't really have their eyes open completely to the fact that they're being fed a false narrative. And you could bring it forward to just last week, with Kenosha and, Jacob Blake, and look at how falsified that story was as far as what the media reported versus what's actually happening. So I think the residents of Baltimore and all of us as Americans need to wake up to the fact that, what you're hearing on your television or in the mainstream media isn't accurate. And you need to connect with people like yourself and people like us that actually are getting to the root of the story. And it's leaders like you that actually have a pulse on the truth of what's actually happening in the city, not the false narrative that's being fed by the media.
It's interesting. The president always talks about fake media and fake news. And I didn't realize how accurate that was or is until my own campaign and some of the things that I've personally seen recently. Last week, with the vice president's nomination speech being done here, or acceptance speech being done here in Baltimore at Fort McHenry, one of them other stations, we don't want to give them no air, so one of them other ones said that, the Republicans were all herded together and they weren't wearing masks and, they don't care about public safety. Now, the interesting thing, and there were no Black people. Now, the last time I checked, for the last 50 years or so, I'm Black. I mean, the makeup is good, but I am Black. Interestingly enough, the woman I was sitting next to at that same acceptance is also Black. She is the chairwoman of Charles County in Maryland. The two gentlemen sitting behind me are part of my Central Committee in Baltimore, and they are also Black. I could continue, but I think you get the point, that the narrative, the false narrative, and the fake news and the fake media is more real than you will ever realize until you are actually out there in that situation. I understand people like to say that's false, but from personal experience, recent personal experience, I can tell you, there's more of that false narrative being spewed and spread than you would believe.
It sure is.
Yeah, and by the way, you also gave the Pledge of Allegiance that night. So
I did. I did. And, but again, according to some of those other folks, there's no Black folk in the party. There was no Black folk there. There's no Black folks participating in the convention, all those kind of interesting things. So in other words, the other side tries to get you to believe something contrary to what your own eyes tell you and what your own mind tells you. And the question becomes, are you going to allow their spin to influence what you know is reality, or are you going to stand up and fight for what you know to be correct? And that's the line in the sand that's been drawn in this election cycle. And that's what folks really need to understand is at stake.
Okay, Pastor, we're going to have to wrap up here. So where can people find you?
So you can find me at writeforbaltimore.com. You can find me at Write for Baltimore on Facebook. You can also find me at those same names on Instagram and Twitter. We are very visible and very responsive.
I love it. And Chris, you always bring on these women that end up being my girl crushes. So now I'm crushing on her this week as well. So I just want to tell you, I have a crush on the pastor now, because really, you're a badass. And I can say that because I'm not a pastor. So I'm going to call it like it is. You're a badass. And I can't wait to see you expose the boogeyman in Baltimore, expose the corruption, and stand up for the residents and the constituents, because you're just the woman to do it. And God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You all.
Thank you so much for that wonderful interview. We really, really enjoyed it. And what America is getting to see is that you are the right solution for Baltimore from a religious freedom standpoint, from a caring for the people standpoint. This was one of the most exciting interviews we've had.
It was, and she's getting things right, and she's on the right side of things. So I can play with this right word all day long, which is what I love about her name. But I really think Baltimore, and I said this so many times during the talk with her, and you and I have discussed this before, such a good example of a city that really needs radical change right now. And it's just an example of so many other places in America where we need good people, good, strong conservative values, good, strong Republicans to come forward and say, you know what? I'm not afraid of the status quo. I'm not afraid of the corruption. I want to expose the boogeyman. I want to go ahead and I want to be part of that change. And she's an amazing, inspiring woman.
Absolutely. What a pleasure.
Yeah, amazing. I'm so glad you connected us. We're gonna have to get some other candidates on this show. I like interviewing these candidates. I like the aspect of us being, we're ahead of the curve here.
Oh, absolutely. So look for more candidates. We're gonna get many more Republican candidates here on this show because they've got a lot going on for them and to help the country.
Can you believe how quick this election is creeping up on us? Can you believe that it's already September? I just thought about this and thought about, the fact that we're like 8 weeks away from the election at this point.
Yeah, we're pretty much, we're almost there. And we're on the road to victory. Trump 2020, baby.
Trump 2020, and the coronavirus is fizzling out just as he predicted and as we all knew. How amazing.
In fact, fizzling out. So there you have it.
Yeah. So don't listen to the fake news. Catch up with us every Monday live on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere you catch our great live episodes. And catch up with us at the Morning After Red Pill podcast on Tuesday mornings. Catch us on Spotify, Google Play, and everywhere else you hear great podcasts. We can't wait to hear your questions, and we're going to be doing some more interactive episodes. Connect with us, please, on Instagram at Red America Radio and on Facebook. We really want to hear from you.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. So, keep it going. Keep it engaged with us.
It is. Chris, another great episode. Can't wait to see you next week. I am actually off to New York City. We're going to see whether or not it is truly the apocalypse there. I'll be reporting from New York and giving you some updates. And, I'll catch up with you next week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see those updates because it's going to be, I am waiting with bated breath.
Awesome. Till next time. Stay tuned, everyone.
Stay tuned.
You have been listening to Red America Radio. Straight up conservative talk for today's red-blooded America.